on average, £2.9 million a year now, on top of great bonuses as well. Front page of the Daily Telegraph, David Cameron goes on the offensive on law and order, going to make that the centre, the core of his campaign come an election. And on the front page of the Times, a story saying that examiners will have to set easier questions in some GCSE science papers. GCSE's already under fire for being too easy already. And on the front page of The Independent, Nelson Mandela with a message to black leaders here in Britain to take their responsibilities very seriously indeed.
Quick look at the tabloids. Daily Mail. Crime. Tories finally get tough. David Cameron today pledges a zero-tolerance approach to crime, along with a major prison rebuilding programme. And The Sun and the Daily Mirror both talking about Amy Winehouse and her behaviour. Her parents and her parents-in-law worried about her behaviour and that of her husband as well. And finally, the Daily Mirror, you'll never grieve alone. 40,000 Liverpool fans paying tribute to murdered schoolboy Rhys Jones last night. That's what's in the papers today.
Yes, we'll be talking about that in just a tick, because it is now time for sport. And one story dominating the back pages, not the front. Liverpool's 4-0 defeat of Toulouse in the Champions League last night. The Mirror's Oliver Holt joins. Easy peasy for Liverpool, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. I mean, they took a slender lead into it from the first leg and never really looked threatened last night, and through to those all-important group stages now. And they're looking very impressive, Liverpool. They've made a great start to the season. All their strikers, they've got 4 strikers now. All their strikers have opened their account this season. The last of them was Peter Crouch. That was Sammy Hoopier scoring the second from a header where it was all over at that point. 2 late goals from Dirk Kuyt. That was a very well-taken one. And the last one, a lovely through ball by Ben Ayoun, another of their new signings.
He played well, that guy.
Yeah.
Really well.
I think that's probably one of his first outings of the season. He's sort of destined to be a bit of a fringe player, I think, this season, but he's a terrific player, and that through ball at the end there was a
sure
example of what he can do.
And as Priya mentioned there, the Liverpool players wearing black armbands there in honour of murdered Rhys Jones, while their fans paid their own tribute, as is now the custom. Rather than have a minute's silence, they give applause more often than not, don't they?
Yeah.
Abroad, Rangers survived a rather testing 90 minutes in Belgrade.
Yeah, a great result for them, actually, 0-0. Again, having taken a slender lead to Belgrade against what we used to know as Red Star Belgrade, and yeah, very good performance. I mean, again, through to the group stages, looks like hopefully, depending on Celtic's result tonight, could have 2 Scottish teams through, and it was a very creditable result to get a draw out there.
And some distressing news from the Carling Cup last night, where the game between Leicester City and Nottingham Forest had to be abandoned at half-time because Clive Clark collapsed at half-time, bringing back some awful memories for football fans of other players.
Well, absolutely, and unfortunately, fairly recent memories as well. The case in Spain at the moment of a guy called Antonio Puerta, who was taken off, had a heart attack on the pitch playing for Sevilla against Getafe in a league game only this weekend, and subsequently died.
Mark Vivian Foe,
who collapsed and died on the pitch, I think, in a Cameroon game, and obviously Terry Yorath's son died as well. So football, unfortunately, is getting used to these sort of early deaths. There's a website, I can't remember what it's called, but that details the passing of former players. I looked at it once. An amazing number of former players die quite young. Yeah. I'm not sure if it's about the stresses and strains that life in professional sport places on the body, but it's a worrying development.
Possible case for better monitoring of their condition, although you'd think that a professional footballer's physical condition is monitored all the time.
I think they're more and more heavily monitored, absolutely. I mean, you think when they come back from pre-season training, for instance, the amount of tests that they go through, you're right. I think they are more and more monitored. I guess there are some things that just, even for them, don't show up.
Well, fingers crossed for this lad, and we hope all is well. With no further news on his condition, but it is a serious condition. And Oliver, good to see you again. Thanks very much, Steve, for being here.
Cheers, John.
Now then, bonuses in the city have increased by almost 1/3 this year, taking them to a record £14 billion. Well, as a result, waiting lists for fast cars and luxury items are growing. But more worryingly, so is the divide between Britain's rich and poor. Let's put this into a bit of perspective for you. £14 billion could pay for an extra 930,000 nurses every year. It could also pay for 64,000 brand new homes. And it's the equivalent to the cost of sending 28 million families on a package holiday to Spain. But perhaps the most shocking statistic of all is that with just a third of that £14 billion, child poverty here in Britain could be halved. Well, joining me now on the telephone from Liverpool is the Chief Executive of Barnardo's, Martin Neary. Martin, £14 billion, a lot of money. What could your charity do with that?
It's an extraordinary amount of money. It's not a matter of what we could do with that, although Barnardo's would welcome some of that. What this shows is that a country that can afford to pay $14 billion in city bonuses, $4 billion up on the massive figure paid last year, is a country which can afford a much smaller figure of about £3.5 billion, which would bring half of our children out of child poverty. And we at Barnardo's, and also at the End Child Poverty Coalition, which I represent, believe the government simply have to do that.
Some would argue, though, Martin, that these high-flying workers work hard, they're under a lot of stress, they contribute a huge amount to our economy, and that they deserve their bonuses.
Well, I'm sure they do work hard, and I'm not suggesting for one moment they shouldn't get bonuses, but let's just suggest they had to get by on bonuses of about £10 billion. Then the additional money they've got this year, $4 billion, that would be enough to take 1 million children out of poverty. And we're not just talking about relative poverty here, we're talking about kids in families, half of them with parents who are working, who just don't have enough money to get by. We are the 4th or 5th richest country in the world, and we have massive and shameful levels of child poverty.
A lot of these bonuses, though, do go to charitable donations because, of course, they get all this money and they wonder what to do with it. And a lot of city workers do make big donations to your charities. So maybe if they didn't get such big bonuses, charities wouldn't benefit so much.
Well, it is undoubtedly the case that some very generous individuals give some money to charity, but there is no evidence to suggest that charities have got anything like the share in the rise of city bonuses in recent years. The vast majority of people who give to us at Barnardo's earn very much less than this. We get a lot of money from people who frankly haven't got very much money. But look, if we can afford to pay $14 billion in city bonuses, if we can afford to host the Olympics costing $10 billion, if as a nation we can spend $10 billion a year on champagne, we can afford less than £4 billion to take half of our children out of child poverty.
Martin, some valid points there. Thank you for joining us.
Time now coming up to 6:15. You're watching the news hour here on GMTV. These are the headlines you're waking up to this morning. Ofsted inspectors have found that standards of care for preschool children in England have got worse in the last year.
More than half of nurses would not report the abuse of an elderly person in their care. That's according to a poll by the charity Help the Aged.
And graphic images showing the dangers of smoking are to be printed on all cigarette packets in Britain under a new government plan to reduce smoking. As I indicated, babies are left to cry, children are forced to stay silent for long periods, and childminders behave in a racist and often aggressive way towards preschool children. Those are some of the shocking findings of an Ofsted report into childcare in England, which comes out later today. The report is based on inspections of over 27,000 childcare organisations last year. And while most nurseries and playgroups offer good quality care, many do not. This is what Ofsted have to say. More than 1,000 childcare providers were found to be unsatisfactory. 1 in 12 creches were judged to be inadequate, with 7% of after-school provision also criticised. Children were left to wander aimlessly with insufficient toys and activities. Well, here to discuss that is the Shadow Minister for the Family, Maria Miller. Maria, good to see you. Are you surprised by the results of this?
Well, I think there's been a rapid expansion in the childcare sector over the last few years. And I think that we've seen, not only in this report today, but also in a report by Durham University earlier this week, that rapid expansion hasn't always gone hand in hand with consistent quality.
You can't excuse racist or abusive language towards children by people who are supposed to be looking after them, can you? However, the service has expanded.
And I think that rapid expansion in services has made it difficult sometimes for some childcare providers to always get the best quality staff that they need to be able to look after young children. I mean, this is an important part of a young child's life, lays the foundations for the future, and childcare is an important part of ensuring the social and emotional development of children, and it is important that we have well-trained staff who don't have the problems that this report seems to be pointing out.
On the other hand, you can hardly accuse the government of being mean about this. This service is costing the government, us, the taxpayers, taxpayers £21 billion a year.
Well, I think that's one of the concerning parts of this report and also the other report by Durham University, that a lot of money has gone into childcare, but we aren't always seeing the quality coming out the other end. What we need to make sure is that when we are seeing expansion into childcare, that is being funded correctly, that the staff that are being encouraged to go into childcare are being trained correctly. And I think we could be doing an awful lot better in terms of emotional and social development of children in childcare settings, looking at perhaps Scandinavian countries, the way they train people who work in childcare settings.
Nevertheless, it's also true to say, is it not, that the majority of homes that were inspected, and nurseries rather, and creches that were inspected, were either good or better than good.
Yes, and the vast majority of childcare providers in this country provide a good quality of service. But as the report points out, because of the rapid expansion that we've seen in the last few years, there are a lot of people who don't have that experience coming into the sector, who are taking on this important role, looking after young children, and we have to make sure that they have the training in place.
I'm sure that most of the criticisms are very valid indeed, but I picked up one when I was reading about it in the early hours of this one. It made me think a little bit, and that's when they said that some of these nurseries don't teach children the difference between right and wrong. Well, that's their parents' responsibility, isn't it, surely?
Well, when a child's in childcare from the ages of 2 or 3 or 4, actually that is an important part of their development, and it's an extension of what the parents are doing in home in terms of helping that child develop. So we have to make sure that childcare settings are helping the children with, yes, understanding the difference between right and wrong, making sure that they are they're growing up to be good, responsible adults. It's laying the foundations for life.
OK, there we've got to leave it. Maria, thanks very much indeed for being with us. And if you've had a bad experience with childcare facilities, we'd like to hear from you. Email us your stories or your thoughts on gm.tv, and we'll be talking to Beverly Muse, the Minister responsible about this issue, at about 7:10.
Right, still to come on the news now. A full weather forecast from Claire.
Yes, and how best to tackle bullying, a scheme costing just £4 per pupil that could hold the answer.
You know, I think it's about time we applauded all that's brilliant about Britain. So why not join me and a few choice celebrities for an afternoon chat every day, and we can talk about anything you want. I'll have music, experts giving advice on all sorts of stuff, and if you've an opinion on anything, I want to hear it. Oh, and I'm not completely hanging up my trowel. I'll talk about gardening too, if you like.
The Alan Titchmarsh Show, Monday at 3 on ITV1.
He's tested himself with an incredible variety of work ranging from film, TV and theatre, and excelled at all of them. With numerous awards nominated and won, he's one of the UK's most exciting acting talents. It's shameless he won't be on the sofa, but you can see him in true festival style live from Venice. James McAvoy, Friday.
I didn't really want to be a TV presenter, I just kind of fell into it.
I became a tennis commentator, and from there, one thing led to another.
I had a grounding the way it used to be done.
Got to be personable.
To have a real curiosity about people.
You've got to be interesting.
Someone who's genuine.
Who wouldn't want to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning?
Want to be part of the GMTV team? If so, tune in September.
Good morning, you're watching the news hour on GMTV. Now, with just days to go until thousands of children return to school, we've been looking at the problem of bullying and how to tackle the issue head-on. Well, in a moment, I'll be speaking to students from Langley Park Girls' School who've adopted a mentoring scheme to beat the bullies. Here's how it works.
I've been bullied about my appearance, about school bags.
There was just a few girls in my form and I kind of became very isolated from them.
The peer listener scheme involves training older students to act as mentors to the younger students. If a student comes to me, I will either just assign them a peer listener, or the student may not come to me but fill out a card and it's dropped into one of the boxes around school requesting that a peer listener makes contact.
We talk to them about school, teachers, homework, problems with friends and all that sort of stuff, and you get to know them really well through that, and you get to see who maybe is being a bit of a bully or who's being bullied.
My peer listener helps me tackle it by saying stuff like just don't care what other people think.
It's helped the students in school because to help them build up their confidence and be able to talk to people about their problems.
The incidences of serious bullying have reduced dramatically. We still get low-level arguments and squabbles and fallouts between friends. I think that's inevitable. But with intervention from a peer listener who they know, they can be picked up fairly quickly and the problems ironed out.
With me in the studio are Fiona and Amy, who you just saw in that video there, along with their teacher Fran Long. Welcome to you all. Fran, why did you decide that you needed a scheme like this in your school?
I don't think we had a particular bullying problem, but what we liked was the way the Beat Bullying presented their work, which was an early intervention, preventative, proactive approach, and we thought that was a way to make a start on the issues.
And how have the students reacted to having the scheme in the school?
I think it's very popular. I think they turn to the peer listeners for all sorts of things. I mean, we have our own preconceived ideas as to how we think they should be used, but in fact I think the girls will talk about other things that have come out as a result of it, so it's really taking off.
And can you kind of quantify how effective it's been? Because Beat Bullying say that these kind of schemes can reduce bullying by around 40%. Can you quantify that? Have you seen that kind of effect in your school?
It's hard to put an exact figure on it, and I don't think we would claim to be a bully-free school, but I would say that what we have now are lots of different strategies in place to support as many of the students as possible.
So it's definitely working.
Definitely working.
Yeah, step forward. Amy, you were in the video and you're a mentor yourself, aren't you? What made you want to get involved and be a mentor?
Well, when I started off at Langley in Year 7, I found it very hard to settle in, and, you know, just getting used to being in an all-girl environment, it can be very... you know, pernickety.
Quite catty, can't it?
Yeah.
I went to an all-girls school, I know that.
So just being in that sort of environment, I knew how hard it could be for new kids, and especially because I came from a school where I was the only pupil. I just thought that anything to try and make that transition easier for pupils, because I mean, I didn't really feel at home at Langley till I was in Year 9, so just making it easier.
It's quite hard work for you though, because you've got your studies as well, and you're helping other kids there.
Yeah.
I mean, it must be quite a full-on schedule for you.
Doing 4 A-levels and stuff, but we do it in the mornings mainly, at break times and at lunch, so all our free periods and all our lesson time isn't interrupted. So, and I also help a girl through email and stuff because she's quite shy, so you know we can do it that way as well. So it's all in our spare time.
There's a lot of ways to help other children, aren't there? And Fiona, you were actually bullied, weren't you?
Yeah.
So how has this mentoring scheme helped you?
Well, I went to see my peer listener once a week, and I was saying stuff about how I've been bullied about school bags and makeup and hair, and she just kept telling me not to care about how, like, I look.
So she's been giving you some good advice and trying to boost your confidence and tell you not to worry about it.
It's much easier going to an adult because it's much a shorter gap of how long they've been since at school.
So it's easier to speak to someone your own age, isn't it, rather than a parent or a teacher? And are you feeling happier now at school?
Yeah, I feel so much happier, more confident, and it's just helped me.
So really, it's really improved your school life, hasn't it? OK, lovely. Well, thank you very much for coming in and telling us your story.
Yeah, well done to all of you. Let's catch up on the weather right now. And I gather Claire has some rather good news. After this lousy summer, prospects not bad for the autumn.
It does not looking too bad at all, actually, John. We're looking at the forecast for the early part of the autumn, and it's looking dry with some sunshine and not a lot of rain. I can't really believe that after such a dreadful summer. It's good news.
Day, because some lovely people are raising money for my wife's charity playing golf. Will it be dry for them down south?
It's golfing weather today, definitely.
Fantastic. Good stuff.
Let's take a look.
Here you are, Mummy.
Oh, thank you, darling. GMTV Weather, sponsored by Nestle Cereals. Whole grain for the whole family every morning.
And it's all thanks to this area of high pressure, which will continue to be with us over the next week or so. It does mean to the north, though, fronts will continue to skirt Scotland and even Northern Ireland, giving some rain from time to time. But eventually you'll see some dry weather. Dry weather this morning here. But you can see there's still a lot of clouds around. I'm not saying it's going to be wall-to-wall sunshine every day. Even so, after, excuse me, such awful weather we've seen, we're seeing a prolonged spell of relatively dry weather. 1 or 2 showers this morning across the far east of East Anglia. Generally speaking, though, the cloud broken, and you should see some sunshine. Heading further north, it's a lovely start to the day here. Not as cold as yesterday, even so, a bit chilly in the glens. And as you can see, most of you seeing some dry weather. But then later on, we do see a weak front that will come in from the northwest. It's going to bring some outbreaks of rain. Only slowly, though. So you can see this band of cloud and rain here, patchy rain at that, and gradually moving its way across to Caithness. You can see across to the Highlands, clipping Northern Ireland, spits and spots here, eventually reaching Aberdeen, I'd say, later on this afternoon, perhaps even Glasgow. but to the south of that remaining dry. Here the wind picking up, and you can see here temperatures typically only 14 to 16 Celsius. But further south, once the sun comes out, cloud coming and going through the day, not too bad at all. Just a light breeze away from the West Country there, 22 Celsius, 72 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's the picture today. What's happening tomorrow? Well, the front clears off, again, like the last few days. It does mean the sun will emerge across parts of central and eastern areas of Scotland, as well as Northern Ireland. Always more cloud, though, across the western side here, and that's because of the wind. Further south, it's mostly fine and dry with some sunshine, although north and western-facing coast, particularly on the western side, they're always seeing a bit more cloud. And then we'll see a little bit more cloud and rain again across this western quadrant of the country. Further south and east, always fine and dry, a little bit breezy at times, so temperatures struggling a little bit. And this is how we see the weekend. Always more clouds in the west, brighter in the east. Here's your summary.
Get a 5-day weather update for your postcode on our website, gm.tv. Good morning, it's 6:27 on Wednesday, the 29th of August 2007.
Yes, you're watching the NewsHour here on GMTV. In the next half hour, the growing cost of sending your child to school, how uniforms, school trips and textbooks are breaking the bank of lots of mums and dads.
We'll be meeting parents who are selling their home in a last-ditch effort to secure their son's release from an Indian jail.
And the American family counting their blessings this morning, all 6 of them. There they are, live in Arizona. We'll be talking to them in about 20 minutes' time.
Thousands of children are being abandoned, left to cry on their own and in some cases racially abused in nurseries. That's according to a new report from Education Inspectors Ofsted, which says that standards of childcare in England have fallen. Well, our chief correspondent Richard Gaisford is at a nursery in Hoddesdon in Hertfordshire. Richard.
Yes, good morning, Priya. Well, parents, of course, want the best for their kids. They would hope that the standards at the nursery they send them to are the same as this. This is Angels at Play here, and it has a good rating from Ofsted, but not all are the same. In fact, an increasing number now don't have that good rating. They don't even have the satisfactory rating. They fall into the unsatisfactory group, and we reckon that's about 1,100 nurseries across the country. And inspectors found that those nurseries really didn't have the levels of equipment and stimulation that the children needed. They didn't have the books, the toys, the playthings, the arts and crafts to keep the children interested throughout the day. Many of the children would wander for hours around unstimulated. Some were neglected. Others were even verbally or racially abused. Now, this is a growth sector. Parents spend thousands of pounds on nursery care, and the government is also ploughing millions into it. And just a few minutes ago on the programme, Maria Miller, who is the shadow family spokesman for the Tory party, said that really we need to keep a closer eye on this growing area of education.
A lot of money has gone into childcare, but we aren't always seeing the quality coming out the other end. What we need to make sure is that when we are seeing expansion into childcare, that is being funded correctly.
It's fair to say the vast majority of nurseries do come up to scratch, but the big question this morning is if this smaller number, 1,100 nurseries around the country, behave like this with the inspectors in, what are they like when they're not there?
Question we'll doubtless be putting to the Minister responsible at 7:10, Richard. Thanks very much indeed.
Now then, here's the rest of the news with Nick Dixon.
Thanks, Priya. Good morning. Detectives hunting the killer of 11-year-old Rhys Jones say they've had a fantastic response to an appeal for information, but still need more help. Police protection has been promised to encourage frightened witnesses to come forward. It comes after a tribute to Rhys and more appeals at Liverpool's Champions League match against Toulouse last night. Police in Hertfordshire have launched a murder inquiry after a teenager and 2 men were killed in a possible firearms incident. Officers were called to a house in Plawhatch Close in Bishop Stortford late last night. The victims are believed to be a 17-year-old boy and 2 men aged 33 and 52. Hard-hitting images of the damage caused by smoking are to be printed on cigarette packets. It's part of a government campaign to get smokers to kick the habit, as Marcella Whittingdale reports.
These gruesome pictures are among 15 which will appear on the back of cigarette packets from next autumn. Picked by the public, they're designed to shock, and evidence shows these frightening images have greater effect on smokers than simple written warnings alone. Similar pictures have already motivated smokers to quit in other countries like Canada and Singapore. The news comes just over a month before the minimum age for buying tobacco in the UK increases from 16 to 18. A combined push the government hopes will convince smokers to stub out the habit for good.
Emergency crews are still battling massive forest fires in Greece, which have already claimed the lives of 64 people. Planes and helicopters have been sent from across Europe to help fight the fires. Many small villages are being engulfed by the flames, and up to 30 have already been completely abandoned. More than half of nurses wouldn't report the abuse of an elderly person in their care, according to a poll out this morning. The study for Help the Aged found that a fear of the abuse being misinterpreted made nurses less likely to report it. The charity wants health and care agencies to make reporting suspected abuse obligatory. Police are growing increasingly concerned about a 12-year-old boy who hasn't been seen for 3 days. Parvinder Singh speaks very little English and has only been in the UK for 2 months. He disappeared on his way home from seeing friends in Bromley in South London on Sunday and has had no contact with his foster parents since then. Amy Winehouse's father-in-law has urged fans not to buy her records to force her to stop taking drugs. The comments from Giles Fielder Civil came as his son and daughter-in-law were pictured on holiday in the Caribbean. He also said the troubled singer should be banned from receiving any awards, but Amy's father, Mitch, defended his daughter.
It is a horrible situation, and our family and Blake's family are living through hell. The record industry isn't as callous as some people might think it is. I have only seen one thing towards my daughter, and that is true love, affection and care.
Leicester City footballer Clive Clark is recovering in hospital after collapsing midway through a match last night. The defender collapsed in the dressing room during half-time of their Carling Cup tie at Nottingham Forest. The match was then abandoned. Stock markets around the world are continuing to suffer after worries about the mortgage market in America. Both the Dow Jones in New York and the FTSE in London closed around 2% down, wiping billions off the value of shares. Continued falls could end up hurting the British economy. And on our website this morning, put your questions to our bullying expert in a live web chat at 9:30. Why cradling your baby the wrong way could be a sign of stress. And we reveal whose autobiography is most likely to be left in a hotel room. All that and more at gm.tv. And finally, a real-life Spider-Man suit could be a reality within 10 years, according to scientists. Natural technology used by spiders and geckos could help create a high-tech kind of microscopic Velcro. Gloves and shoes covered in the material could give humans spider-like abilities to climb the side of a building or hang upside down from a roof. Only available in red and blue, apparently. It's 6:34. Here's what's happening where you are.
Thanks very much. Good morning. The main stories here in the northwest. First, officers hunting the killer of 11-year-old Rhys Jones, who was shot in Liverpool, have assured witnesses of police protection in the quest to bring his killer to justice. The inquest into his death is to be opened and adjourned later. Yesterday, Liverpool players and fans paid tribute to the Everton supporter as the anthem of his beloved football club was played for the first time at the Reds' home ground. It's a week since his death. Tributes continue to pour in as police search a section of woodland close to the scene.
I'll be bored because he was like the funnest person in the street. Me and him, we always used to be the ones to start the games. Everyone else would just be like in the trees talking.
Police have arrested 2 people in connection with the murder of a father from Manchester who was shot dead at a funeral wake. Tyrone Gilbert, who was 23, was gunned down outside a house in Chorlton-on-Medlock. 2 men, both aged 24, remain in police custody. Hundreds of health workers are starting a 3-day strike in Manchester today in protest against the ongoing suspension of a psychiatric nurse. Unison members who work for Manchester Mental Health Trust have been supporting Karen Reisman, who was suspended after speaking out against plans to cut staff numbers. Yesterday, psychiatric patients from North Manchester General were bussed out to private facilities because of the lack of staff to care for them during the strike period.
I think it's a terrible shame that it's come to this, but if we let the union be beaten, then we let the fight against cuts be beaten, and that will mean next time they want to close a service, there won't be anybody there to stop it. And that's why we think this fight is so important.
Liverpool booked their place in the group stages of the Champions League after a 4-0 victory over Toulouse last night. Peter Crouch struck after just 19 minutes to put the Reds in command. Sami Hyypiä made it 2, beating a corner at the near post. Dirk Kuyt gave the Reds a 3-goal advantage, only for him to score a 4th in the closing minutes. Finally, Liverpool's 800th birthday celebration ended with a bang last night. Thousands attended one of the world's biggest firework displays. The spectacle lit up the sky and could be seen far and wide. Organisers say it was fitting for the city's birthday. That's it for now. I'm back at 7:05. In a moment, we'll return to John in London. But first, a look at the region's weather.
Be ready for all changing light conditions. Here's the weather forecast. Brought to you by Transitions Lenses.
It'll be a fine start to the day with more sun developing as the day goes on. Getting cloudy later with a possibility of some drizzle later on. There'll be highs today of around 17 degrees Celsius.
Hello there, you're watching the News Hour. Let's have a quick look at today's front pages. Broadsheets first, Nelson Mandela's message to Black Britain. It's important for leaders to harness responsibilities. Nelson Mandela talking ahead of his trip to Britain today. He's unveiling a statue of himself, 9 foot high apparently. The Times leads on, make science easier, examiners are told. Examiners will have to set easier questions in some GCSE science papers. A quick look at one of the questions there. Many people observe the stars using A, a telescope, B, a microscope, C, an X-ray tube, or D, a synthesizer. What do you reckon?
I'll think about it.
Think about it,
Yeah.
tell us later. On to the tabloids. The Sun, concerns about Amy Winehouse and her husband. Apparently their parents are a bit worried about their behaviour and what they're up to. And same story on the Daily Mail as well, along with a story about Rhys Jones, the little 11-year-old boy who was killed in Liverpool. You'll never grieve alone. 40,000 Liverpool fans held their scarves aloft last night at a match to pay tribute to him.
OK, time now is 6:38. A question for you. Can you afford to send your children to school? A report out later today by the charity Citizens Advice says the cost of educating children is spiralling out of control, leaving 3 out of 4 parents struggling to pay. And it's not just the cost of buying uniforms. The pressure to pay for trips, textbooks and after-school activities is too much for many families. Sue Jamieson is with the Pickford family down at Hove in Sussex, who have their problems too, I gather. What can you tell us, Sue?
Yes, good morning. This is Nancy, and with her children, we've got Ellie, who's 7, Lola, who's 9, and Jude, who's not so much of a problem with the schooling yet, as he's only 3. But she spends at least £150 to £200 each year on the uniform alone, and husband John works in London, has a good job. This is how the costs add up, because it's not just the uniform.
Lots of boys, lots of smells and lots of noise. Playing football in the park, kicking push bikes after dark. Baggy trousers, dirty shirt, pulling hair and eating dirt. Teacher comes to break it up, back of the end with a plastic cup. Oh, what fun we had, but did it really turn out bad? All I learned at school was how to bend, not break the rule. Oh, what fun we had, but at that time it seemed so bad, trying different ways.
The Citizens Advice Bureau says that 3 out of 4 of us actually struggle to pay for all the materials that you need for school. Nancy, what about for you? Do you find it easy to budget for all these things?
I do try to budget, but I must admit there's always something that I haven't thought about. I mean, for example, one of our violins was broken, so we had to pay for a new one. And we can hire them, but we pass them down through the family. So, and then we find there are school trips that we didn't know about, or we weren't given quite enough time for...
Because you actually tackled the school on the issue of school trips,
I
didn't you?
did. It was £130 for 2 days for an 8-year-old, and I thought that was an incredible amount of money that we were asked to find. And we were given time to find the money for that, but I didn't find that I could. And the school was very good, and they arranged for a day out for the children. There are about 20 children that couldn't go on that trip, and so we all did go out and had a lovely day. The school was very good, and I think they are aware of the problem.
But it's things like uniforms as well, isn't it? Because this one you can't just buy at one of the supermarkets because it has to be
This
a
has to
purple one.
come through the school, and there are lots of things that we need that have the school's emblem on. The school, again, are very good, and they do have a second-hand
amount of clothing that we can
But you,
get.
after all, you're not, you know, not on the bread line exactly.
No, this is it. I mean, we have an income coming in, and we still do find it quite difficult.
So many families, I think, in the same position, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of response to that this morning. Back to you.
Thanks very much indeed, Sue. Teresa Pershard from Citizens Advice joins me. Now, let's just talk about school uniforms, because I remember the days, I still remember the days I went to school, and only one shop sold the school blazer and the school kit, which always struck me as a bit of a carve-up, frankly. And that still goes on, doesn't it?
It certainly does, and that's a very common issue facing the parents who've taken part in our survey, and it's something that's driving the costs that they face. The cost of school uniforms that we heard about ranged hugely, some people paying more than £500, and it's being driven a lot by the fact that certain items, and a lot of the PE kit particularly, and the actual uniform clothing itself, not just the tie or the badge, had to come from a specialist store. But it doesn't have to be like that. And this is what we're saying to schools, is actually have sensible policies, which mean that all parents can predict what it's likely to cost. Actually shop around to get the best deal for a simple, colour-based uniform.
Right, I think the argument is that it's not cost-effective to distribute these blazers, as say 600 pupils at one school through 5 different shops. It only makes profit sense for one shop to sell. That's the argument.
Well, if you want a uniform which has lots of tassels and gold braid and looks very fancy, then it won't be something that you can buy in a market or a major supermarket, that's for sure, because it'll be very restricted, so there'll be very high costs. But what you're doing then is making those parents who know they're going to have difficulty affording that uniform look for the school where they know that they can afford the clothing.
And then, as we heard there's all the extra costs. So begging the question of school trips and things like that, begging the question, is education really free after all?
Well, that's the thing we're highlighting. No, it doesn't seem to be. And the government's own research shows that on average parents are spending about £1,000 a year just to send their kids to state schools. There's a big lump of spending on uniform and PE kit, some of it never ever used, like hockey boots that stay in the box for a whole year and then are outgrown. But there's things like paying not to wear your school uniform, parties, discos, the pressure to bring in things for sales, and voluntary contributions.
Yes, well, those are always there, but they're not obligatory. They are voluntary. I suppose you'll feel bad if you don't contribute.
Some of our parents are saying that they felt actually under a lot of pressure to make voluntary contributions.
2 final points. I mean, for the really hard up, there are grants available. And secondly, in all fairness, you know, the government, i.e. we, the public, do not have a bottomless pit of cash to hand out willy-nilly, do we?
That's right, but there aren't very many grants available. Fewer than half of local authorities provide grants, and some of those grants are tiny, £12 against a cost of uniform of £500, one parent told us. So if there aren't these grants available to help people on low incomes, and the parent you spoke to just now wasn't in that situation but is finding it a difficulty, then let's get sensible policies that most parents can afford easily, that they can take advantage of these very cheap uniform offers that you see in supermarkets these days.
Policies emanating from the school rather than government, you mean?
Yeah, so school policies that make sense. Don't ask people to buy hockey boots when you're never ever going to use them in the whole year.
Sure. Got to leave it there. Love to know your views at home on this one. I'm sure lots of you are finding it tough to pay for all these things, particularly at this time of year. Teresa, thanks very much for being with us.
You're watching the news now. The headlines that you're waking up to this morning. Ofsted inspectors have found that standards of care for preschool children in England have got worse in the last year.
Police in Hertfordshire have launched a murder inquiry after a teenager and 2 men were killed in a possible firearms incident.
Graphic images showing the dangers of smoking are to be printed on all cigarette packets in Britain under a new government plan to reduce smoking. Now then, our next guests have been forced to put their home on the market in a last-ditch attempt to get their son out of jail. 30-year-old Patrick Maluzzo has served 3 years of a 10-year sentence for drug trafficking in India, a conviction that the charity Fair Trials Abroad say was secured after he was tortured into confessing. Well, Teresa and Salvatore Maluzzo are here, along with Catherine Wolfhusen from Fair Trials Abroad. Welcome to you all. Now, just explain briefly to us, I know it's very difficult, but how did Patrick end up in this situation?
Well, he was on a final trip around the world, and that was going to be his last backpacking trip. And he went from Goa around and up to Delhi, and basically him and a friend had booked tickets on a train to travel, but at the last minute Patrick decided not to go on this trip. He said he wanted to go on to Agra and Jaipur, which he then did, and he transferred a small satchel to a friend. There was dirty laundry in it, and inside that bag also was a photograph of Patrick and a photocopy of his passport details. So in the meantime his friend got off the train. Patrick went his way and they went that way, and he got off the train to get some food and drink, and when he turned back the train had taken off.
With his luggage in it?
With the luggage in it. So then at some point they were checking the seats and they found 3 bags. Now there's a dispute. Some say that the staff said the bags were on the seat, others said they were underneath.
And the police say they found drugs in those bags, did they?
No,
That's
in one
the
bag.
allegation. In one bag?
Nothing.
Okay.
There was nothing in Patrick's bag.
So Patrick was sent to jail in India and apparently has confessed, but that's debatable, isn't it? But you've obviously never doubted his innocence, and you've now decided to make the big decision of selling your home. What are you going to use the money for?
Solicitors and, you know, legal fees and travel.
And this all takes time, particularly in a country like India, where things can be long-winded, there's lots of red tape, it's a long process, isn't it?
It could take up to 5 years before it comes to appeal. We've been trying for the last year to bring him for an appeal in Jaipur at the High Courts, but our main aim now, because we're not going to get anywhere, our hope now that the British government intervenes and try and help Assad in a way to, one, to have Patrick's appeal heard out of turn from an Indian, and 2, to try and get the appeal heard outside the Rajasthan, because I personally have no confidence in any way that he will get a fair appeal in Rajasthan.
Well, the Foreign Office have issued a statement saying that they're aware of the concerns raised by Mr Malutso's family and Fair Trials Abroad and are discussing matters with the family and his legal representation and await their instruction on how they wish to proceed. Catherine, what do you think is going on here with this case?
Well, it's a deeply disturbing case because, of course, Patrick was very badly tortured. The convictions that were obtained, the confessions that were obtained under torture were later thrown out by the court. So, in fact, he wasn't convicted on that basis. He was paraded before local media before his trial even started as being guilty. And we feel, in fact, that both that, the long delays and the prejudice against him locally meant that he was never going to get a fair trial, and ultimately that's what happened. The problem is we're having a lot of difficulty in getting that problem reversed and getting him freed, and that's why we're looking to the government to help.
OK, well, best of luck with it all. We wish you all the best, and, of course, Patrick.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now then, as any new mum will tell you, it's hard work keeping one baby clean, fed and happy, so spare a thought for Jenny Mache from Arizona in the United States. She's had 6 all at the same time, well, more or less the same time. Jenny joins us now along with her husband Brian, and as you can see, 6 little bundles of joy. Very good morning to you. Thanks very much indeed for staying up to talk to us. Jenny, first and foremost, how are you and how are the children?
I'm doing good. I'm very, very tired, but I'm usually up at this time of night, so it's okay. The babies are good, but as you can see, it's their bedtime. That's why they're kind of fussing a little bit, but we feel really blessed.
I'm sure you do. Well, let's ask our cameraman to pull back a little bit, and if you will, introduce us all to your 6 youngsters.
Sure. You want me to introduce them right now?
Yes, please.
Yeah, go.
Okay. This is Grant William. That over there is Savannah Jane. This is Cole Robert. This is Molly Grace. Hold on. I'm sorry.
This is Bailey Elizabeth over here. And that's Blake Robert in the corner.
No.
Who's
Blake
that?
Nicholas.
Blake Nicholas. I got confused, sorry.
Well, you can be forgiven for getting them mixed up in the circumstances. And tell me this,
is the
Jenny,
newest
everyone
edition
wants to know,
here.
how on earth do you cope? I mean, tell me about how many nappy changes a day, how many bottles each day?
How many diapers a day and bottles a day?
Wow. You know what? I've kind of lost count, but we feed them 7 times a day, and we change them at least 1 time a feed. So that's 6 times 7 is 42 diapers a day, and that's minimum.
42 nappies a
bottles, or nappies, yes.
Absolutely. Nappers to us, diapers to you. And Brian, obviously it was a very dramatic day when they all arrived, but some concerns and health problems too.
Yeah, it was, the doctor said that the delivery actually went so well that it actually wound up being part of a problem, actually, because it was actually the smoothest high-order multiple delivery that the hospital had ever seen. And Jenny actually didn't wind up losing much blood, and that actually caused her to go into heart failure because her heart was overloaded with extra blood that was given to her the 2 previous nights. So she actually had a little bit of trouble and a little scare. She had to go into the critical care unit for about a week or so. But obviously, as you can see, she's made a complete recovery. She's doing super well again. I was terrified for a while there, as you know, our whole family was, but she's obviously back to top shape again.
Well, I'm delighted to hear it. I've got to ask you one very quick question, Brian. Any more?
No, this is it. Absolutely, we're done. I've already made my appointment with Dr. Snippets, so I'll be having my vasectomy sometime next month.
Who can blame you? Brian, thanks very much, Jenny. Thank you very much, DTO. Talk to you a little bit later on, and maybe by then your 6 beautiful babies will be fast asleep. Thanks very much, Dee, for being with us.
Hopefully. Thank you so much.
Hands full there.
Amazing. Wonderful sight. That's just about it from us. Lots more still to come, of course, from Kate and Andrew.
Yeah, they'll be joined by Girls Aloud here in the studio performing their new single.
And, of course, Claire with the weather right after the break.
You know, I think it's about time we applauded all that's brilliant about Britain. So why not join me and a few choice celebrities for an afternoon chat every day, and we can talk about anything you want. I'll have music, experts giving advice on all sorts of stuff, and if you've an opinion on anything, I want to hear it. Oh, and I'm not completely hanging up my trowel. I'll talk about gardening too, if you like.
The Alan Titchmarsh Show, Monday at 3 on ITV1.
"1001 Troubleshooter Ultra is now better than ever. 1001, the magic number for carpets."
I'm Nadine Baggett, Celebrity Beauty Editor. There's a beauty product that's been splashed across page after page of magazines and newspapers. It contains what I think is a must-have anti-aging ingredient, pentapeptides. And it can give you dramatically younger-looking skin without any drama about the price. So what's the product everyone's talking about? Olay Regenerist. It used to be my little secret. Now Olay Regenerist is the worst-kept secret in beauty. To read the buzz for yourself, go to olay.co.uk.
Big night tomorrow. I don't know, I feel like it. Bloated, you know, and constipated. Try this.
New Senecot Dual Relief contains the only formulation that traditionally relieves both constipation and bloating. Try new Senecot Dual Relief tablets, a natural choice for constipation and bloating.
Got heartburn, indigestion? Now there's new Gaviscon Double Action, our best ever formulation to soothe the burning pain of heartburn and neutralise excess acid. For relief you can really feel. New Gaviscon Double Action. What a feeling.
No pesticides, no nasty smells, no laborious combing. Hedrin, a breakthrough head lice treatment that works. Use your head, use your Hedrin.
It's my goal to help the nation's kids to eat more healthily and reduce childhood obesity. Did you know that kids who eat cereal for breakfast each day are less likely to be overweight than those who don't? That's why I'm supporting the Kellogg's Wake Up to Breakfast campaign. Make sure your children wake up to breakfast with Kellogg's.
For dramatically younger-looking skin, I recommend Olay Regenerist. But I'm not the only one. You can see what other beauty journalists have to say at olay.co.uk.
My name is Columbo.
Every fortnight, collect a new DVD and superb magazine, the Columbo Collection. Your first DVD and magazine, only $1.99.
Once a year,
The world's brightest stars outshine the world's most stunning city. Join the maestros of movie making at one of the greatest celebrations of cinema. The 2007 Venice Film Festival starts Friday on GMTV.
Here you are, Mummy.
Oh, thank you, darling. GMTV weather, sponsored by Nestle Cereals. Whole grain for the whole family every morning.
Hello there. Now, I've been looking at the weather charts right the way through to around the 8th, 9th of September, and most places are looking fairly dry. I say fairly dry because in the north we will be seeing fronts sort of skirt across to Scotland and clipping Northern Ireland, but they're really not amounting to very much. And the reason why, we've got high pressure extending across, and this will be with us at least for the next week or so, to be honest, which is good news after such a lousy summer. This morning, then, we're seeing clouds sort of circulating around the high, never really amounting to very much. We will see some sunshine this morning, and then through the afternoon, thickening clouds, bringing some light rain to northern and western areas of Scotland, perhaps even to Northern Ireland for a time. Also more clouds across France at the moment, blocking out the sun just a little bit. But for us, we should see some blue sky, a little bit of sunshine this morning. Watch out for just the odd rogue shower across the eastern side of East Anglia, and further north, northern England, northern parts of Wales doing very well. For Scotland and Northern Ireland, patchy cloud this morning, a little bit of sunshine. It isn't going to last, though, but it will be a slow process. What's going to happen over the next few hours into this afternoon? We'll see an area of cloud and rain gradually move in. It's moving in from the northwest. That means, I'd say by about mid-afternoon, we could see spits and spots coming over the Highlands up to the Moray Firth, eventually reaching, I'd say, Aberdeen and perhaps even Glasgow towards evening time, as well as central and northern areas of Northern Ireland. The wind's picking up as well, so we'll take the edge off the temperatures. Now, further south, as you can see, thickening cloud all the while, but I think it's going to stay dry across Cumbria as well as Northumberland. To the south of that, I think cloud broken, allowing some further spells of sunshine. 22 Celsius here, not too bad at all. And then Tuesday, tomorrow into Friday. Friday is looking a bit better than tomorrow, where we're seeing more away patchy cloud and rain across this western side of the country. East is going to be best over the next few days, a bit breezy on Friday, and then for the weekend, again, some brighter spells in the east, always more cloud in the west. Is your summary? Find out what's in store for the next 5 days on our website, gm.tv.
Good morning. Thousands of children are at risk, let down by inadequate nurseries and childminders, according to a damning report out today.
Grieving together, the fans of Liverpool pay a moving tribute to the Everton supporting family of Rhys Jones.
And digging deep for the new term, why the cost of going to school is breaking the bank for many mums and dads. That's what we're talking about today, Wednesday, the 29th of August, 2007. Hello there, good morning. You're watching GMTV today. It's almost 7 o'clock.
And also on the programme, if you're a smoker, have a look at these images. Do they upset you, and do they upset you enough to give up? Because they're soon going to be on cigarette packets. Could they help you quit smoking? Email us with your thoughts at gm.tv. Would they stop you starting? That's the other thing, getting the youngsters to stop in the first place. Talking to the Health Secretary in half an hour.
OK, and beating the bullies once again this morning. Are mentoring schemes the way forward for schools? They do seem to work.
And Girls Aloud, well, they're here, they're ready to chat, they're looking gorgeous, and they're even going to sing for us, would you believe? They've got their new single, they're hoping for a 16th top 10 hit, and I have a feeling it might be on its way.
Yeah, looking forward to talking with them. Thousands of children are being abandoned, left to cry on their own, and in some cases racially abused in nurseries.
That's according to a new report from Education Inspectors Ofsted, which says that standards of childcare in England have fallen. Our chief correspondent Richard Gaisford is at a nursery in Hoddesdon in Hertfordshire. Good morning to you, Richard.
Yes, good morning, Kate. Well, parents, of course, want the best for their kids. They want to send them to nurseries like this one that have good standards. This is Angels at Play. It's rated good by Ofsted, but not all fall into that category. And increasingly, they're not even getting the satisfactory badge. They're falling into the inadequate or unsatisfactory area. And we think that's nearly 1,100 nurseries around the country that have this new rating of unsatisfactory or inadequate. And that means tens of thousands of children aren't getting the level of care or the attention that they deserve. Inspectors found they didn't have reading materials, toys, didn't have the arts and crafts, enough to keep the children stimulated. Some wandered around neglected for hours. Others were either racially or verbally abused by the staff. And this really is a growth sector. There are thousands of nurseries across the country, thousands of pounds being spent by parents. And a little earlier, Maria Miller from the Tories, she's the Shadow Family spokesman, said the government needs to be keeping more of an eye on things.
A lot of money has gone into childcare, but we aren't always seeing the quality coming out the other end. What we need to make sure is that when we are seeing expansion into childcare, that is being funded correctly.
Well, it's fair to put parents' minds at rest. The vast majority of nurseries do come up to scratch, according to the inspectors. But there is this small minority, the 1,100 or so nurseries around the country that don't. The big question this morning, Kate, if this is what happens when the inspectors are there, what's happening in these places when they're not?
Indeed, indeed. That's the worrying thing for any parents, I think. Talk about that a bit later on.
Beverly Hughes is in a few minutes to talk about that.
Huge issue, huge concern for parents. The rest of the news now, though. Here's Priya.
Thanks, Kate. Detectives hunting the killer of 11-year-old Rhys Jones say they've had a fantastic response to an appeal for information, but still need more help. Police protection has been promised to encourage frightened witnesses to come forward. Well, Matt Arnold's at the scene of the shooting in Croxteth. Matt, what's going on?
Good morning. Well, police are talking up the response to their appeal for information, but underlying that, of course, is the need to turn the anonymous tip-offs into signed witness statements. The Crown Prosecution Service have agreed special measures should it come to court, using video links and screens to protect witnesses. No need for such anonymity at Anfield last night, where in unprecedented scenes, Rhys's parents, Melanie and Steve, and brother Owen, received a standing ovation from the Liverpool crowd before their game last night. They were dressed in blue, the Everton colours, and the tannoy played Johnny Todd or Zed Carr's The Everton theme tune, which of course was Rhys's favourite song. The Anfield faithful then moved on to a rending edition of You'll Never Walk Alone. It really was a very moving experience, as the fans I spoke to outside the stadium after the game agreed.
Very sombre, very sad. Yeah, even though the lad was the Everton supporter, I think everyone felt for him and his parents.
I have two 11-year-old grandsons who are here with me tonight, and my heart goes out to the family because I know how I would feel if it was one of mine.
Brought tears to everybody's eyes, I think.
Obviously you feel for the parents and family, without a doubt.
That's the area that I grew up in, and it's just, to me, it's horrendous. It's absolutely beyond belief.
Police will continue to search Dam Wood today after an anonymous tip-off they received yesterday. Presumably that's for a weapon. The determination to catch Rhys's killer is dominating life here on Merseyside, a young life that was cut short brutally 1 week ago tonight.
Matt, thank you. Police in Hertfordshire have launched a murder inquiry after a teenager and two men were killed in a possible firearms incident. Officers were called to a house in Plawhatch.